This week on Dine Drink CLE The Podcast. Done 2 pop-ups so far at LBM in Lakewood and Never Say Dive in Old Brooklyn. There's one coming up on May 20th in Doink's Burger Joint in Collinwood. And they are just making some really interesting dishes. They have a Kurage jellyfish, which I think just means seasoned jellyfish, monkfish liver, bluefish tuna with caviar. Would you eat a jellyfish?
Community kitchens where they can do education, where they can do outreach into the community. They're planning to create a food court in the alleyway between the arcade and the market hall.
Yeah.
So
Brad really keeps in touch with his customers, and he said we had a lot of people say, bring back Moxie, bring back Moxie. It did have that reputation, and he was able to do it.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how I'm Josh Duke.
And I'm Alex Darus.
And you're either watching or listening to Dine Drink CLE The Podcast, where each and every week we are joined by cleveland.com's best and brightest food experts, insiders, and influencers talking all things food and drink here in the Northeast Ohio area. What are we talking about today, Alex?
Yeah, we got a big news coming out of the West Side Market. Paris Wolfe is going to tell us about some changes going on over there. Beloved restaurant that has been gone for a while, Moxie, is making a comeback. And then we're also going to talk about a Japanese pop-up serving some very creative sushi in town. So
sounds delicious.
Yeah, so first up, we have Paris. Hi, Paris.
Hi, Alex.
Yeah, so what's going on? Big news. The management change finally happened at the West Side Market. So why don't you give us the lowdown of what's going on?
Well, instead of being under the guise of the guidance of the city, the West Side Market is now being managed by a nonprofit, which means they have a team of staff instead of just city people being reallocated whenever needed. And they are going to be, as a nonprofit, be able to raise money.
So for customers coming in, we talked about this a little bit in the past, but for the customer, what is that going to mean? What is that going to look like? What difference is going to make?
Right now, in the near future, it's not going to look like a lot. They're going to do a deep cleaning of the facility. Then they're going to be drawing some plans for future renovations to support the master plan.
Yeah, and it seems like right now the big task at hand would be raising money because they're trying
raising money, yes.
Is it 20 million?
They actually need 40 million.
Wow.
They have the master plan is about 60 million to make happen. They have 20 million, so they're trying to raise another 40 million.
What are they doing to get that money?
Right now, they are working toward applying for grants, looking at what foundations and what other resources, tax abatements, tax credits they can get, seeing what they can do in that area.
And for the average shopper at the West Side Market, I guess, what is the benefit of a nonprofit taking over rather than the city?
Well, the average shopper is not going to, they're going to have more security in the vendors that are at the market.
Yeah.
The vendors are going to now have longer term leases. They're going to be able to do food preparation as they move forward. So you can have ready to eat food there.
Yeah. And with it being a nonprofit now, they can apply for these grants.
They can get the money. As the city, they couldn't take money, public monies, other monies, donations. But now as a nonprofit management, they can get money that way.
So maybe it would be, but some people would be the benefit could be that instead of paying through taxes, right? Because that would be regularly, like if it was owned by the city, wouldn't they have to raise the money through taxes?
Yes and no.
Technically. Well,
yeah.
Yeah, now it's like they can go through these outside resources to keep the market alive, it seems like, and improving.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think on the roster of things to come, it sounded like there was an event center where they're going to hold.
There's an event center. They're planning to do some community kitchens where they can do education, where they can do outreach into the community. They're planning to create a food court in the alleyway between the arcade and the market hall.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things coming.
And obviously that stuff is going to sort of bring in revenue. Maybe there'll be ticketed events possibly that can help them fund things.
They might even change the parking lot funding structure. So when people park there, they're not going to be able to do it for free on weekends.
No, that's the best parking.
It is for West 25th on an off hours.
I
Yeah.
know.
But they might
that's
change
my
some of
favorite
that.
parking lot. That's a bummer. So I guess also in general, like all these big changes with the event center and the food court and stuff, we're not going to see that by the end of this year.
No, not by the end of this year, but it is coming.
Yeah. So it's just a long process, and in general, just ultimately not saving, but ensuring that the market has longevity for.
Right. And the vendors are excited. I talked to a number of vendors and they are excited. They are very encouraged. They've been working on this for a long time and they see something could happen now.
Which is really good, because I would imagine, just as this my little brain working, but I just would imagine people are not so accepting of change. You know what I mean? I feel like people in this day and age generally are like very scared of things being different and assuming it's going to mean the worst.
That's a really good point, because with the vendors, they've been asking for change so long that they're not resisting it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the people that are resisting it are people who don't know the full story, shoppers who think there's going to be a lot of change that's going to be negative. And the idea is they're restoring the market to grandeur and improving it, not changing.
Yeah, and realistically, some of these vendors are probably currently for the shoppers or people who might be resistant to change think, oh, why would you try to fix it? Because it's running fine. But really behind the scenes, a lot of these vendors are probably having to pull a lot of unnecessary strings or balance things that aren't part of their business.
Running fine. Things like when the electricity went out the other day, the way the old electricity is wired, it blew one of the vendors' ice machines and he has to replace it completely.
Wow.
Or when the freight elevators go down, people can't move their products from the basement up to sell it.
Yeah.
So some of the infrastructure items are going to be handled first, and those are very important.
Yeah.
Well, and that's probably where obviously the food court and all the kind of fun stuff that customers will see is going to cost money, but these infrastructure necessary changes are probably where a lot of that money is going towards.
That's where the first money needs to go.
Yeah.
So the experience can be maintained and then elevated.
Yeah, and supporting the vendors. I mean, if you don't have the support of the vendors who can run their business and stuff, then you don't have the market.
Yeah. And I'm sure getting rid of some of these costs that these vendors are enduring as a result of some of these issues, I'm sure that kind of affects the customer too in terms of pricing and stuff.
Pricing, food safety, everything.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. So very exciting news at the market, but don't get too concerned because things won't be changing as soon as you think. And it's changed for the better.
And on that same note of long-lasting Cleveland area restaurants and of that sort, we have a very special return of a very special restaurant, and Marc Bona is here to sort of talk about that. Welcome, Marc.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so tell us about Moxie. It's coming back.
You know, and it is special. Moxie was around for over 20 years. It had a great reputation, run by Brad Friedlander, a veteran restaurateur in the area. And this story really goes back about 5 years ago, because that's about when Moxie closed. Moxie closed in 2019. And right before that, in 2018, James Balchik opened Aurelia Honest Food and Drink right in the heart of downtown Chagrin Falls. He took over a very old, tiny, cozy diner called Dink's, which is kind of famous in that area. Totally turned it upside down, cleaned it up, and it was a small restaurant and a very, very small, tiny rotating menu. He did a great job with it. However, things were going a little bit slow recently for him, and he had some health concerns and had to really rely on his staff to help out. And at the same time, Brad Friedlander and a business partner, Michael Dubois, were looking for a place and kind of came about and found out about Aurelia, and they decided it would be a good deal. And one of the things that really piqued their interest was, Brad told me, he said Balchik really was one of the few chefs in this area truly doing farm to table. A lot of people throw that term out, but they were absolutely truly doing farm to table.
Yeah, so that was a big aspect of Friedlander going into this, or was there any other kind of factors?
It was a big reason, but really, Alex, the other real big factor that went into this deal was, I really think it was geography. Brad Friedlander had owned a lot of restaurants in this area for many, many years. Moxie in Beachwood, Blue, the restaurant, was around for a minute. Red, the steakhouse, originally when it was in Beachwood, was his. A few other places. He recently opened Lopez, kind of a high-end Mexican place, not a typical taco joint. A lot of interesting dishes on the menu over on East Washington Street in Chagrin Falls. That restaurant is only 1 mile away from Aurelia. And one thing I've learned from talking to restaurant owners is that geography really does help them because they need to bounce back and forth. And if you got a place, well, depending on the traffic, 20, 30 miles can be rough in greater Cleveland. And some people have restaurants in Columbus and here. That's a lot of time spent on the road. Now he's only a mile apart. He can keep tabs on him. And also, Balchek, I think it was good timing for him because he's going to remain on. I think there's a good respect between everybody involved. He's going to stay on as chef. He's very talented. I reviewed this restaurant with several times. We went several times. One time I went with Dave Pekowitz, who is one of our videographers on this show, as well as a photographer, and he's quite a foodie. And we had a great meal there. They've done a wonderful job. Balchek has done a great job with a rotating menu. It'll be interesting to see what he does with the Moxie menu. They'll bring back some old favorites, and they are bringing back some of the artwork that Moxie had as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and was it a lot of customers asking for Moxie to come back? Was that kind of the...
Yeah, Brad really keeps in touch with his customers, and he said we had a lot of people say, bring back Moxie, bring back Moxie. It did have that reputation, and he was able to do it.
It's going to be interesting to see how they pull elements from Aurelia and also from the Moxie and Beachwood and sort of see how that kind of creates a little bit of a new but still familiar and old experience.
Yeah, and kind of like what you said too, what do you mean by like real farm to table? Because like you said, that is kind of a big buzzword now. But what does he do that makes him like really kind of committed to that?
There were on the menu, I remember he would list the sourcing for where things came from. And there was chicken on there from a very specific farm. He would be very transparent and open, which I like. And I think people like to consume local, drink local. We've talked about this a lot. And they even had, I remember when Dave and I went for dessert, we had a blueberry maple ice cream.
Yum.
Now, I'm not a huge sweets fan, but we had this, and I thought it was incredible because the flavor, it started with blueberry, and then after a while, you can just kind of taste a little bit of maple. It wasn't overly syrupy or sugary, and it was house-made. They made it right there. He was doing things truly from scratch, so I give him points for that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also, too, when you're using good ingredients straight from the farm, you kind of don't have to hide them through all this other stuff like that. It's the blueberries will shine through.
That's a great point. That's exactly true.
Okay, so Alex, you recently did a story, a big feature on this Japanese pop-up that's popping up all around the Cleveland area. So tell me about it. What's going on with it?
Yeah, Kyuu-Juu. It's a project from Chef Ryan Endrian. He is the chef over at Ishoni, and his partner is Kwan Gong. They both kind of came from California. They were doing restaurants over there. The pandemic hit, and they made their way to Cleveland thinking it was going to be a short-term thing. And then they were like, wow, there's a really cool food scene here. And I mean, compared to LA, where there's a great sushi restaurant on every corner, it was like, there is a market for this here. So they started out at Ishoni. They started doing Tuesday night omasake tastings, which you go in there, you have to make a reservation. It's 2 hours, if not almost 3. You get between 20 and 24 courses. And it's not just like they're throwing plates at you back to back. It's like a whole experience. All the courses have to go into one another and everything. So he was kind of experimenting in that regard, and then wanted to do something even more experimental, which is Kyuu-Juu, which means 90 in Japanese. He was born in 1990 is the name.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But they've done 2 pop-ups so far at LBM in Lakewood and Never Say Dive in Old Brooklyn. There's one coming up on May 20th in Doink's Burger Joint in Collinwood. And they are just making some really interesting dishes. They have a Kurage jellyfish, which I think just means seasoned jellyfish, monkfish liver, bluefish tuna with
Wow.
caviar. I know the one dish that he doesn't change is the flash fried octopus. It's kind of his signature. I think they have it at Ishoni too. But yeah, it's kind of a cool. Eventually, he would like to create a Japanese contemporary tasting restaurant that's kind of really, really out, like with these really, really out there dishes, and have that be a full restaurant concept. But for now, the pop-ups, he's been selling out, and the plates are really popular. People keep going back.
Yeah, in your story, you mentioned that there was at least 200 people between the two events he's done so far, which sounds insane for it to only have been 2 events. But I mean, how can you blame anyone? Where else are you going to find these super exotic as menu items? I have no idea.
That's what I was, especially like the jellyfish. I was asking, and I know his partner, Kwan, he said like he drives to the airport every week to the cargo section and picks up his fish order because he has to source them differently. But they also have connections through Ishoni, obviously, which helps. But yeah, it's like not your typical California rolls and poke bowls.
So I wonder, do you think, I'm guessing it would be frozen then, I'm assuming.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Well,
probably fresh to frozen. I think that's how a lot of like fish is. That would kind of be a good story.
Yeah, because I have no idea how else we're getting jellyfish over here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is like, how do you get all of these seafoods in Ohio? Would you eat a jellyfish?
Oh, absolutely. I think
a bug, no.
But a bug, no. Well, we're talking fish and insects. Okay, we're talking. Well, I guess jellyfish isn't technically
a crab
fish.
Is basically an underwater insect. A crawfish, that's a bug.
So a crab isn't technically what's seafood?
No, just like philosophically, how is that different than a bug?
Well, I'm not a scientist, okay, or a biologist. I don't know, but I know I've been trained to look at a crab as a crab and an insect as an insect. But anyway, I just feel like this is a very interesting experience. I cannot wait for them to keep going and doing more. Doinks, they're doing big things over there. Was there any reason as to why they went with Doinks? Do you know?
He's just been connecting a lot with different people. I know Ryan like organically went into LBM, started talking to the bartender. Some of the people at LBM are connected with Never Say Dive, but also with Doinks. The way they started is on Rasavong, who owns Doinks. He was making burgers out of his garage in Collinwood, selling out during COVID, and then it just naturally turned into a restaurant. So I think a lot of these Cleveland restaurateurs, they kind of know that, especially in a city this size, the pop-up to brick and mortar restaurant pipeline is very accessible, and they kind of all help each other out. They know where they start. And I mean, if a restaurant is closed on a Monday or whatever, and they're not doing their usual kitchen menu, why not have a pop-up come in and then you have people buying drinks and stuff anyways? It's like, makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know what price-wise you're looking at, if you could compare it to anything?
It kind of depends. I know some of the dishes can get a little bit pricier because, I mean, you're getting bluefin tuna and caviar, but comparatively to like a fine dining space, I don't think it's that different. And I think a lot of the plates too, he was saying like a lot of people were ordering naturally a lot of different things and just sharing. So,
and you said he did a little time trying to make it work in LA, and I believe he also had some background experience overseas in Japan, right? Am I misremembering?
No, he's from Indonesia. Yes,
gotcha.
But then when he moved to LA, he actually said he moved to LA and did not like sushi, did not have experience with Japanese food, and kind of naturally started going to omakase dining experiences and fell in love with it. So he kind of fell in love with it through this expression that is a bit more experimental, and it's literally like the chef putting themselves into dishes. It's not like recreating a million rolls the same night. So I think that is what really inspired him with that.
Yeah, and that's what this pop-up experience is too. It's omakase.
No, omakase is at Ishoni. It's kind of like some of the dishes, but omakase is like you're getting, in Ishoni's case, it's 20 to 24 dishes, but you're getting several dishes in a row. You're usually sitting at the sushi counter and they're literally making them fresh and handing them to you. The dishes are probably what eventually, when he makes his goal of opening a tasting restaurant, would put these kinds of dishes into like an omakase experience, I would see.
Cool. Well, this is a very Very, very, very unique. I would imagine something like this in LA. So it's great that we have a little slice of that here popping up in Cleveland.
Yeah, I just realized I get to pick the next restaurant for our restaurant club. Maybe we'll be going to the Doinks pop-up for jellyfish.
I've been meaning to go to Doinks for other things, but I wouldn't mind going to Doinks for this either.
Yeah, both for sure. Thanks so much for listening or watching the Dine Drink CLE podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at DineDrinkCLE and subscribe to our newsletter at cleveland.com/newsletters.